have qualms about where he is taking this party and have expressed so publicly and with volume.
Let me just tell you, Donald Trump is not a conservative.
Indeed.
He is not really a Republican. He has flirted with, as you know, the Democrats and the Reform Party and running as an independent. This is a man whose personal ego and ambition have overshadowed everything. And the reflection that we now see in his presidency, even as I'm being interviewed by you, the breaking news, which is monumental in terms of implications for Donald Trump and the future of his presidency. Yes. This is, I was saying to somebody yesterday, you remember the words that were written by Bob Hartman, who was a speechwriter for Gerald Ford, the words that he uttered as he took the oath of office on August 9, 1974. Ford said, "Our national nightmare is over. And when President Trump leaves the White House, that will be the overwhelming consensus, I believe, of Americans who understand the abuses that this president has heaped on the Constitution and the political process."
Indeed, that will be a truly bipartisan moment. We're speaking with John Rothmann. He is a radio talk show host on KGO 810 AM in San Francisco. He's a lecturer on American politics and the presidency, co-author of Icon of Evil and Harold E. Stassen, A Life and Perennial Candidacy of the Progressive Republican. We also learned this week of the passing of Ray Taliaferro, one of your colleagues, John, a longtime KGO talk show host who was heard throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. He was overnight, so much of the West Coast. He was the first black talk show host in a major radio market. He was the head of the local chapter of the NAACP and was the first black member of the San Francisco Arts Commission. He had been missing for a while, and I know that you've spoken about this along with your colleague Pat Thurston on KGO. He had been missing in Illinois and Kentucky before he was discovered dead. Tell us what you know about what happened.
We know that Ray was in Paducah, Kentucky. He went with his wife of 6 months. She inherited some property. They drove out to the property to take a look at it. He drove off in the car while she, I guess, was surveying the property, or was in the back of the house, depending upon which story you read. He went missing, and his body was discovered. According to the sheriff, there is no foul play suggested. He did have dementia. I can tell you that those of us who were his friends, he stopped returning my calls, I would say, about 2 or 3 years ago. He did not return the calls of his children. He did not respond to old friends. Clearly there was a problem. His tragic end, I can only tell you, is heartbreaking. You pointed out Ray and I were colleagues on KGO, but I want to just comment on his community involvement.
Yeah.
This is a man who for 35 years was on KGO, had record-breaking numbers in terms of listeners in the middle of the night, all up and down the West Coast and beyond. He was the president of the NAACP here in San Francisco. He was the president of the San Francisco Arts Commission. He served on the board of the War Memorial Opera House. He was the president of the Leukemia Society. And when we did the Leukemia Curathons on KGO under his leadership and the leadership of our president, Mickey Luckoff, $18 million was raised to cure leukemia over the years.
I certainly have a visceral memory of the energy with which he imbued those pitches to listeners to give.
It's not enough, he would say. He was a showman, a very private man, but a man whose public persona was such that he was a legend here in the city. One thing I will tell you is he was a brilliant musician.
Yes.
He and I had a little routine we worked out. I would call on him to play the piano for the Curathon. And when he played the piano, the money poured in because he was a brilliant pianist. And so it is a real tragedy. There will be a memorial service held here in San Francisco under the auspices of the Commonwealth Club. I should point out that he was an active member of the board of the Commonwealth Club, and until his death was on the advisory committee at the Commonwealth Club. He was a man of so many dimensions and so many fine attributes, and we will miss him, and his listeners miss him. The outpouring of people. But you realize, because you've been in radio for a long time, and I laughingly call myself Ray Taliaferro on the weekends, because I did 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. Saturday, 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday. Ray did the other 5 nights from 1 to 5. You develop an intimacy on the radio.
Yes.
That is very different than television. On the radio, you're with a person in their bedroom, in their bathroom, in their kitchen, in their most intimate moments. They go to sleep with you. They wake up with you. They are startled by some of the things you say, and they respond by picking up the phone and calling. There is no medium like radio. And so Ray was a part of the lives of millions and millions of people. They didn't necessarily listen all night. They did what everybody does on the radio. They tuned in, they tuned out. But if I told you the number of people who said, I went to bed listening to Ray, and when I woke up in the morning, I was still listening to him. And that's a marvelous sense. May I also point out, he's, I think, the only radio personality in the country who did a poetry night, where anybody could call in and read their poetry. He had a chapel night where you could praise God or denounce God, as was your preference. He had a jazz night where he, with a remarkable collection, would entertain people remarkably. And I will tell you, even people who like to go to bed early stayed awake for some of those evenings with Ray Taliaferro. And I'll never forget, because it's an interesting irony. It was 7 years ago, December 1st, when KGO changed its format, and we were all let go, although I'm back, and they're now back to talk. We were all the so-called legends were let go. And I'll never forget, in the meeting, after the announcement was made, very tersely, Ray raised his hand and said, "Does that mean I shouldn't come in tonight?" Because for Ray, it was like breathing. Yeah. And
and it's not exactly an easy schedule to do every day from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. That's something. That's an accomplishment.
It is. And Ray slept very short amounts of time. He used to tell me he slept 4 hours a night, and yet he still had that indomitable energy about him. He was a busy man, doing the things he wanted to do. He kept his private life very, very separate. I had never met or talked to his children until this incident. I haven't met them face to face, but I've had the opportunity to talk with his 2 sons. And he kept his private life private. What is his legacy? Well, anytime you see somebody who has had leukemia and who has recovered, you can credit in part Ray Taliaferro. Anytime you hear about a battle for human rights, you can, again, in part, credit Ray Taliaferro. Anytime you hear of someone championing the arts, you will think, I hope, of Ray Taliaferro. Anytime you hear of a brilliant piece of music, you'll think of Ray. All of these attributes, all of these moments in his life contributed to making our lives so much better.
I couldn't have put it better. I know that my father used to go to sleep with the radio on with the host before Ray, used to wake up with his voice, in his ear. And my daughter is in college now, but when she was a baby and would get up in the middle of the night and I would warm bottles of milk up for her, I would listen to Ray myself. And
I want to just add one thing. I know we've got to close, but I want to say this. December 1st, 7 years ago, we were all let go. I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
And Ray Talieferro's mic went silent. The tragedy is that his death was reported 7 years and 1 day after that period of time. And now we know that his mic will be silent for eternity.
Indeed. We've been speaking with John Rothmann. He's a radio talk show host on KGO 810 AM in San Francisco. Again, the author of Icon of Evil and Harold A. Stassen, The Life and Perennial Candidacy of the Progressive Republican. John, it's a pleasure talking with you, and I look forward to hearing you more on KGO. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, and a very happy holiday season to one and all.
To you as well. Thanks so much, John. All the best to you.